are welcome to the final session of Unit 6, which also happens to be the final session on the entire module on principles and methods of teaching senior high school physics. And in this session, we'll be looking at evaluating laboratory work. My name is Patrick Ejay. By the end of this session, you should be able to list at least 3 goals for laboratory work. Mention at least 5 activities in which students are usually involved in laboratory work. And explain how to test in laboratory work. So let's look at evaluating laboratory work. And in the physics laboratory work, there are some activities in which students are involved in. And some of these activities involve setting up apparatus, constructing materials, observing natural phenomena, gathering and recording data, classifying and organizing materials, reading instruments, analyzing data, and drawing conclusions from data. Now, these are all activities that the learner can be asked to perform in the laboratory. And so once this becomes the activity, then they also serve as the goals. So the goal of the laboratory work can be that the learners should be able to set up an apparatus. They should be able to construct materials. They should be able to observe natural phenomena, gather and record data. This becomes the goals in the laboratory learning. They should be able to write a report of the experiment. Now let's look at dismantling, cleaning, storing, and repairing apparatus. So this is one area in laboratory work that we can evaluate students on. How are they able to dismantle a whole setup that has been used for performing an experiment? How do they clean? How are they able to do storing or repair some basic parts of the materials that they use? And so these activities may be evaluated in several ways. And some of the ways include practical tests, use of unknowns, achievement tests, direct observation of laboratory techniques, written reports, as well as individual conferences. So in individual conferences, the teacher can have a one-on-one meeting with the student, and the student will explain the work that they did to the teacher. Or it can be a group of students who will be meeting the teacher and explain how they were able to do the work. So these are some of the ways that we can evaluate how the learner was able to dismantle a whole set of apparatus, how the learner is able to do cleaning. So we can give an achievement test that describes how you will clean this particular apparatus or material. How is this material stored? What is the proper way of handling this material? We can use an achievement test. We can sometimes observe learners doing the needful, and we can evaluate them on that. So let's look at practical laboratory tests. And as a teacher, you can conduct a practical test by directing the student or a group of students to perform a certain laboratory task. So the teacher then observed the techniques that they used, the correctness of procedures, and the results obtained. So you gave them a task to perform. And while they are performing the task, you must observe the techniques that they are using, observe, find out whether they are using the correct procedure, and find out whether the results obtained from the experimental work is correct or not. And procedures such as finding the relationship between current through a resistor and potential difference across it, or finding the relationship between the length of a pendulum and the period of oscillation. This is a typical task that you can give to your learners to assess their practical laboratory work. And we can also use achievement tests and understand that achievement test that is designed to assess understanding of course content can also be used to evaluate techniques for laboratory work. So achievement tests can be used for when you are teaching theory in the classroom, and you can also use them in the laboratory. And so this is due to the concern that correct knowledge is obtained through laboratory work. And for that reason, whenever you are using achievement tests, ensure that as much as possible, you don't use simple record test items to evaluate your learners' achievement in the practical laboratory work. So you must desist from using such test items. So tests that depend on accurate observation, recognition of pertinent data, and ability to reason logically are more suitable for measuring results of laboratory work. So let us consider an example. Which of the following instruments would be suitable for measuring the thickness of a strand of copper wire? Explain your answer. So we have provided the students with a list of instruments, and all these instruments can be used for measuring length. But which of them is the most appropriate one that can be used to measure the thickness of a strand of copper wire? And they are not just to select the instrument, but they must also explain why they think the selected instrument is the appropriate one that can be used. So evaluating laboratory work involving testing of materials, determining unknowns, recognizing and classifying materials, and outlining experimental procedures are very helpful anytime we want to evaluate students' laboratory work. And so let's take this example. Given some water, beaker, Benson burner, thermometer, and a calorimeter, explain how you would determine the specific heat capacity of a solid. And so we have to provide all these materials to the learner, and we will realize that one problem with practical laboratory examination is that they take a great deal of time to set up the apparatus. And so as a teacher, sometimes you can make use of students or laboratory assistants, or you just get some two students to help you in setting up the place for examination before the time. So they only come and help you to pick up the materials that you need. You set up the room before it is time for you to conduct the experiment. So let's look at how to evaluate laboratory reports. And in the laboratory, written reports is the most frequently used method of evaluating learners' progress. But this method, as a teacher, you must scrutinize it very well, because most often this report becomes a stereotype form that loses its value as an instrument of evaluation. There are students who just even go and copy past reports from maybe their seniors, or they copy the reports written by their colleagues and just bring it to you, the teacher, to mark, to evaluate their progress. And so each student is required to use a standard form that offers opportunity for creativity and flexibility. Now, students, in this session, we looked at evaluating laboratory work. Now, as we bring this session and this module to an end, let us have this question. Now, after the teacher has directed students to conduct a laboratory task, what does he do? 2. How can the teacher use laboratory work to assess students' achievement? Thank you very much for joining all the sessions on this module, that is Principles and Methods of Teaching Senior High School Physics. I hope you enjoy all the sessions on this module. Thank you very much for your time in all the sessions. Bye.